Ken Dueker, Director of Emergency Services. I had to make sure I got that right, but I get the impression he's had a lot of titles, and I discovered since I asked you to join tonight that a lot of those titles were as a para member. Quite impressive. And I didn't know that. So welcome, Ken, and I'm just going to pass it to you and tell us what's up and what's happening, and I'm sure we'll all be well informed.
Thanks, Rob. All right. Hey, everybody, and everybody in Zoom world. And I see a lot of familiar faces on Zoom. So we're going to get the slides popped up here. And don't worry, this won't be death by PowerPoint. You'll die a much more gruesome way. Don't worry. So I'm the OES chief. So there are acronyms in public safety. Without acronyms, we would be SOL. Thank you very much. Thank you. Start with a little joke. See who's paying attention. There is free coffee in the back. Is it free? I don't know. Yes. It's free. All right. So I'm gonna take you kind of through a little bit of a wander about, if you will, to paraphrase the Australian way, where we're a walkabout, where we're going to look at hazards and risks and why we do what we do in public safety, and specifically my group in the Office of Emergency Services. So we'll go through again a little bit of that. I will be showing you some shiny equipment that's not part of the raffle, sadly. But the big point is I really want to have the output of today's meeting that if you're not already involved in some way in helping us make our communities safer, that you take some action. Now, we do have some people in the room who are already emergency services volunteers, such as Barbara and others who are online. We have others. I saw Jeff Norris online, who's professionally involved, working for another government. But you might say, hey, I'm really just into software-defined radios or whatever it is, and I don't have much to do with disasters or emergency planning. That's all well and good, but you can still take action to make yourself and your family a bit safer. So those will be kind of the learning objectives. So we'll hit the next slide here. It's my cue to the Zoom master, I think, who's multitasking with the chat. So today we're going to talk about all these things. I'm not going to read all this stuff, but as I said, I'm going to be harping on that when you come out of tonight's lecture, that you take some sort of action, whether that's build an emergency kit for yourself, or maybe dump out the 20-year-old cans of beans that are there and replace them, stuff like that. Next slide. Yeah, the ones that, don't eat those. So I like to start with this slide because everybody has the things that make them concerned. And it's hard as humans to be empirical about this. Our brains are wired from eons ago, before telecommunications and certainly before social media, to make us aware of hazards that could kill us because the tribe, a mile away got killed by the Yeti that's on the loose. And in today's world, we're bombarded by things that look scary or are meant to look scary, advertisement, political manipulation, whatever it is. And we have two unfortunate reactions to that. One, somewhat of a healthy reaction. We just tune it out. We ignore it. We put a notch filter, if you will, on that. Thank you. Our F jokes will be in my lecture. And we just kind of just say, no, not relevant. And then the other thing is we just say, well, it can't happen to me. It can't happen here. I pay my taxes so that people in, shiny uniforms will show up and handle it. That's also fallacious. So we want to kind of thread the needle on this and just understand, I'm not going to read all this, but FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, says every community and every private organization, including para, and all of its members should be cognizant of three categories of hazards: natural disaster, technological, and human caused. Now, this audience might actually be more attuned to things that go wrong in technology, accidents, and so forth, coding errors that, I don't know, take down the power grid, oops, stuff like that. Should have remmed that stuff out. But natural disasters, I think most people are aware that we could have an earthquake sometime. I just want to check, do we have any flat earthers, tectonic deniers? And no, okay. Just checking, flat earthers. That's the next haul over maybe. And then human cause. And the human cause, that's an aphorism, right? For people doing bad things for various reasons. Terrorism on the extreme, but it could just be somebody breaking into your car right now and stealing your radio. Yeah. So all these things are there. And the fun fact, of course, is that, wow, why isn't there a pandemic on the board? We could list everything. So these are the things that we believe, and we being the consensus of the Palo Alto and Stanford area, we believe we ought to do some planning and preparation around. And so this kind of drives what I'm about to talk about this evening. Next slide. It's not just the risk, right? The earthquake by itself is unlikely to kill you because we have modern building codes, and frankly, you're going to be lucky. What we get to be more concerned about are the second and third order consequences of an earthquake, for example. So in the Haiti earthquake of about 10 to a dozen years ago, more people died from infection, gangrene, things of that nature than died by being crushed in their buildings, even though their building codes were really not very good. So we want to think about the consequences of the earthquake. It doesn't make a really great Hollywood movie so much, but how about, you're 2 weeks without being able to go to the grocery store, you're 4 or 6 weeks without any running water, maybe longer, right? So field day is actually kind of apropos, right? Think about, well, you're going to operate portable, you're going to operate on battery, hopefully solar, right? Those are some things to kind of think about. And what does this mean to you? If you have prescription medication, you have prescription eyeglasses, if those things get broken or lost, what's your backup, and where do you have your backup? So we won't have time to go through all this, but I do want to call out the human psychology part of this. So my team, obviously we do law enforcement as well as fire, and we tended to deploy to a lot of these major fires. And you see, unfortunately, it's increased during the pandemic times, but opportunistic looting and criminal behavior in the midst of a wildfire. Now, some of that is just bad guys think, okay, you've been evacuated, I'm going to go steal your stuff. Some of it's a little bit deeper. There's a little bit of a mass psychosis going on in my armchair quarterback view of this. So we need to be cognizant of all these things, not just what's on the big board as far as a Hollywood script. Next slide. So back to our perception of risk, and do we think we are quote unquote safe? And I'm going to say that's not even a relevant question. You're safe until you're not, right? How many of you drive around with a spare tire in your car? Hopefully all of you, right? How many of you have ever had to put a spare tire on your car? Okay. Now we're getting somewhere, right? So many people think, if they've never had to use a spare tire, why don't I take that spare tire out? I'll make more room in my car. I'll save a little bit on mileage. Yet we don't. Most people don't, because eventually you need the spare tire. And that's why, to paraphrase James Bond, we say never when confronted with a risk or a scenario, even if you think, ooh, I don't believe that could happen. Next slide. Because even here in Palo Alto, we've had workplace shootings, school shootings, and one of our high school kids joined ISIS. Not a good move on your college admission plan, by the way, especially when you get blown up by a drone. Next slide. That's kind of the extreme. Let's talk about practical day-to-day. It might surprise you to know that Palo Alto's 911 center, which is police, fire, and ambulance, it bounces between the third and fourth busiest in the entire county. So the busiest is Santa Clara County, then San Jose, and then right now the city of Santa Clara just barely edges us out, but sometimes we're ahead of the city of Santa Clara. We are greatly smaller than all of those 3 jurisdictions I just listed. And yet we have driven by calls to 911. This is not me calling to pull somebody over for speeding or whatnot. These are calls from you, the general public, into our 911 center. And it's kind of highlighted there in bold and red, but this is the part that causes people to scratch their heads a little bit. Why is Palo Alto so busy? We're not unsafe, but we're busy because people come here to do things. They come here to shop. They come here to go to a Stanford football game. By the way, a Stanford football game almost doubles our population just with one game. And do you think maybe a disproportionate number of people at the game might be having a higher blood alcohol content than the rest of the population? In my experience, yes. Yes. You're a couple of slides ahead of me. No, these are the calls that end up in our dispatch. So if they get routed back, then yes, that will count. Yes. Good point. So next slide. No, it's a good question. We'll come back to that. So what do we do in OES? It's different from the fire department, different from the police department. Well, a lot of planning and preparation that frankly is not possible in the larger departments that are doing day-to-day operations. Because I just pointed out how busy they are, running calls, doing things like that. And I'm certainly not here to make any kind of political statement, because this is also true in Menlo Park and Mountain View and other local cities. But the number of first responders that we have budgeted as well as able to hire and retain has fallen over the past few years. That's a complex thing that I don't have time to go into. So we're trying to do more with less. We're trying to use technology and improve our efficiency as much as possible. Of course, there's a diminishing marginal return to that when you need boots on the grounds, or you need people with guns or fire hoses who are good people, and you don't have those people. Technology does not always substitute. But a little bit on the big board there about what we do, and you'll see some things that might resonate if you're into technology or you're into situational awareness. Do you have a question? Go ahead.
Bullet 6, it says ESG.
Ah, yes, good. That's a bonus that you get $20 for every acronym you find. Just check with the raffle in the back. Emergency services volunteers. We'll explain that one more. So good. Yes, call out any acronyms. So anyhow, we do a lot of things with a very small group. So the entire Office of Emergency Services in Palo Alto right now is 2.5 people. However, I have police and fire staff that I can grab and actually approve their overtime and do that. So we flex among the 3 public safety departments when we need to operationally deploy. And you might say, well, that seems kind of tight, except you compare us to Menlo Park. We have infinitely more than they do, for example, right? So we're lucky to have what we have, right? But we may not have enough for everything. Next slide. So EOC, Emergency Operations Center. I will declare these acronyms a little bit better here. So a lot of what we do day to day when there's not a disaster, right? There's a ton of this that we get involved with. Special events, I mentioned Stanford football games, dignitary visits, things that either bring a lot of people in or maybe not bring a lot of people, but have a risk component. The president of Israel comes to visit. Risk component, right? That keeps us quite busy. And because we serve Stanford University, and because we work closely with San Mateo County and other agencies in Santa Clara County, we tend to get involved in a lot of these things, but as highlighted, risk-based. So we might be out involved at some major incident. Could be a plane crash. It could be a missing person at the incident command post, the ICP, and or our emergency operations center. So where we do our business is a function of where it's most efficiently done. And we'll talk a little bit more about our vehicles and our deployment methodology. Next slide. So here's the emergency operations center, also known as a scary room in the basement with lots of screens. The relevant thing for this, and I'm going to start to put these puzzle pieces a bit together, is our always dire need for good communications and getting high quality information, right? We can listen to various radio channels and monitor things. That's great. But if we have people who are part of our emergency services volunteer program, such as Barbara and others who are officially plugged in with us, that's even better, because we could give Barbara an assignment such as, please go up to the foothills with your binoculars and your HT and let us know if there's any smoke coming from the hills on the 4th of July. Thanks for doing that, Barbara. Right? So that kind of stuff, right? Next slide. So I like to view the EOC as a management system, not a scary room in the basement, although it's both, right? So a management system is, how are we getting information, adjudicating the information, processing it, generally geospatially, and then packaging it up so that police and fire and also public works and other providers have utility for it. Because if it's just a bunch of arcane data and video feeds, that's just noise, right? So another way to look at this, radio people, improve SNR, signal noise ratio. That's kind of what we're doing writ large. Our number one priority when we're doing these sort of operations is to support the safety and the operational effectiveness of our units in the field, because we have so few of them. We need to be much better than we would be absent these tools. Next slide. I'm not going to read all this, but the state OES gives us these helpful 25 questions. I'm just going to pick a couple of them that seem kind of obvious just to pull the thread a little bit about nuance. What happened? It's bold, it's in red. Does anybody remember the San Bruno PG&E gas explosion from some time ago? Does anybody know what that was called into 911 as being? Plane crash, jumbo jet. Because, right, big boom. People look out their window. They're right under SFO, by the way, right? So they're used to jumbo jets flying overhead. They hear a big boom. They see flames everywhere, and they say, "Oh my gosh!" They bridge the gap in their little human minds and say, "Must be a jumbo jet that crashed." It'd be a good assumption in general. By the way, did it change the response a whole lot? Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. We were just disappointed that we could not squirt the fire out. It was like, "Oh, that's not so good." Okay. So what happened? Sometimes we get that wrong, and yet the consumers of our information, including the city council, city management, and you in the public, for some reason expect omniscience from us. So the question in the back, Daryl. Yes. Yeah, because that's exactly it. So even trained professional airline pilots can make an inference that's incorrect. So that's a good point. And we can make that same mistake too. So we are not omniscient, nor are we infallible, but we use these tools to try to improve our odds a little bit. Next slide. It'd be a very similar response. Well, in the very beginning, right? Yeah, because getting that expertise from a civilian caller would be a bit of a stretch. Right. Exactly. So I'm not going to read all this, nor am I going to explain all these acronyms, but I will give you a bonus one. C4ISR, Command, Control, Communications, Computers, Intel, Search, Recon. So that's a military best practice. So in other words, another way to look at how we do data management is this. We're doing all these things that if you had a much larger public safety agency like Los Angeles, those would be baked in a bit more to the fire department, to the police department, to the sheriff's department. Here in the Bay Area, we don't have agencies that large. So emergency management in many cases steps in and does some or all of these things. We're kind of like a Swiss Army knife for disaster management. That's another way to look at it. Next slide. Okay, getting close to equipment. Get ready. Again, not part of the raffle. One of our challenges in Palo Alto that was still ongoing and will be for another year or more is that really cool emergency operations center, and next to it, that really, really busy 911 center located in a 1960s building that is not seismically up to code. Isn't that great, Palo Alto? Yeah. There's some, but not enough to make it survivable. Yeah. Yep. I hate it when they do that. It was good for atomic attack, but less good for fire next door. So it's Murphy's Law, right? So one of our risk mitigation strategies, PSAP, Public Safety Answering Point, also known as 911 Center. Or anybody? PAPD, Palo Alto Police Department. That's only a $1 acronym. Yeah, they're all there. Okay, so we have this thing called a MEOC, the Mobile Emergency Operations Center. And it's part of our strategy to do two things. One is to de-risk the likely failure of our 911 center and our emergency operations center. And two, give us a really great platform to manage incidents in the field, both planned and unplanned. So planned events, right? I mentioned some of them already. Stanford football games, dignitary visits, anything that's high risk. As I said, we do work a lot with other jurisdictions. My team, for example, sent equipment to the Paradise fire up in Butte County a couple of years ago. So we do operate through the statewide mutual aid system through state OES. But most of the time we're in the Palo Alto area, give or take, just like most of para members, right? We might be in Redwood City, we might be in Mountain View, but we're in this zone. And on average, during non-pandemic times, we would see a deployment, not for training, but for something real, about almost once a week. So 30 times a year on average. Pretty busy. Next slide. So, well, I've covered all this already. We do occasionally have SWAT call outs, narcotics activities, major search warrants. We do dabble in that, but most of it is more in the, major event, dignitary visit category. But that gives us some practice for the unplanned events, right? You don't want to have the Windows update go on in the middle of your critical incident. It's kind of a bummer. You don't ever actually want a Windows update, but that's a different story. Next slide. Oh, well, there it is. So, and you can get, by the way, specs on this and videos, cityofpalto.org/OES, cityofpalto.org/OES. And yes, this is, yeah, you get to look at this picture that's in the raffle. We occasionally do tours of this. We actually just had this vehicle out on, what was it, Tuesday night for National Night Out. So we occasionally will do tours. We could probably work out something for para in the future, but right now we're a little busy, but yes, maybe in the future. So next slide. That could be a very good, very good field day operation. That's a lot of paperwork. Basically, it's a giant bus-sized vehicle loaded full of radios. No, there's no bathroom. We need room for radios. Okay. It has an onboard diesel generator, which I recently mitigated because diesel is finite and polluting and kind of a pain in the butt. So we now, thanks to a Homeland Security grant, have a ginormous, that's a technical term, ginormous solar battery trailer that can power the MEOC even in December. Lots of generation capacity. So we're very proud of that. I don't have that in the slide, but if you go to cityofpalto.org/OES, you can see that trailer. We kept the generator, sure. Yeah, because we mitigate our risk a little bit. Yeah. So and by the way, we can run a hybrid where we run the diesel gen set if we need to top off the batteries in the trailer, right? Yes, when we, for example, we go on big state fires, there's a fuel plan and all that. So all the apparatus, including ours, would get fuel. Very important. Next slide. MEOC support vehicle. Speaking of fuel and stuff, I like this photo because it was taken during a pretty big flood that we had in 2012. And it shows it in action, but I know it's a little blurry. So again, go to our website to see it less blurry, but and wet. But it's a big old truck and it has a diesel fuel tender on it, among other things. It also has an awful lot of radios. It has a pneumatic mast that can go up very high. Yeah, it's loaded. It's loaded full. No, that's the next slide. That's my ride tonight, which is the little truck there. So this also has, I think, about 12 or 14 antennas. The camera right now is down for maintenance, but we have a thermal camera there to help look for hot spots and fires. There's a nice microwave dish. So that mast tilts up and goes about 28 feet or so in the air. Next slide. I think we have the specs right there. There we go. Most importantly, that vehicle has a radio over IP, a ROIP interoperability package on it so that I can patch disparate radio systems together. So I could take, I know for hams, this is like easy peasy, right? We're just operating split bands, but in the public safety world, split band is a real pain in the butt and costs millions or billions of dollars. So here we have an implementation that works pretty well for us. Yep. A lot of our stuff is digital now, and digital is in some ways easier to patch, in some ways impossible to patch. Yes, sir.
You mentioned 4.9 gigahertz.
Yes.
So,
It's like a public safety band licensed microwave. So
like back
yeah, we have a couple of repeater sites, if you will, up in the hills that are on city fiber or they're linked back. So if we can get through those pesky trees that are all over the place, we can get some pretty good throughput. So anyhow, lots of stuff like this. And the nice thing is we actually use this gear, as I mentioned, especially when we go and assist out of our area and we have to work on statewide interoperability channels, or we're linking a fire channel from a different county that may not be in the state load. So we do a lot of this stuff. Next slide. Well, this kind of is just what I said. So Urban Shield used to be an annual event, which we kind of still carry the spirit forward of preparedness. So that event, for political reasons, got shut down 4 or 5 years ago. But in our minds, we like this kind of sustainability strategy, which means that if there's an opportunity for us to turn on all of our stuff and see if it works, and it costs us a marginal amount of extra time and effort, our attitude is we're going to do it. If it's involving partner agencies that we don't normally work with, we're going to do that because it helps us. Yes, Daryl. That was part of it. Yeah, that got folded into another exercise, some of the EOC exercises. So yeah, if you've been involved with Yellow Command, which is the EOC part of that, yeah, some of that got moved to UOSI's got a different exercise program that does that. Mm-hmm. Yep, super fun stuff. I wish there'd be more of that. All right, next slide. Okay, so enough with technology. And by the way, this is a real picture, not Photoshop, from Hurricane Katrina. Imagine you're the homeowner and you're filling out your insurance. Yes, my house caught on fire, flooded, and then floated away. State Farm, whatever. Yeah, you're in no hands. Yeah, this is going to be a hard one. So the reason I put this slide in here, I just find it salient because here in the Bay Area, we're pretty complacent. We're pretty soft. We think about, oh, earthquakes. Yeah, 1989, Loma Prieta, yada, yada. Anybody good at logarithms in this room? Understand? Okay, a little bit of bring the slide rule out, your HP. Okay, very good. Good. Next slide. So here's the problem with Loma Prieta. If you're benchmarking that as the big one, it's not. The big one is really big. We just don't know. This is an older slide, and I keep it because it's salient. It's from the year 2000, and the future is after the year 2000. But it's still true because the USGS, for them, 22 years is nothing in geologic time, right? So every 140, 160 years, there's supposed to be a big one on the San Andreas Fault, and there could be a heck of a big one on the Hayward Fault. If you want to look up the Haywired scenario and not sleep for a few nights, feel free to do that. The Haywired scenario will make you sweat if you like electronics, especially. But the bottom line is that sometime, right, we're getting awful close to 2030, right? Again, this slide is from 1999 where the future was there, Back to the Future. It's even a retro looking slide. But our quiet time is going to come to an end and we're going to get clobbered by a mega quake. That's just scientifically probable. It's unlikely that we're going to just skate the rest of our lives here and not get clobbered, whether it's 2030 or 2040 or 2050. Somewhere in there, we're hosed. Okay, next slide. By the way, it doesn't have to be the Hayward Fault or the San Andreas Fault that causes a lot of issues. If you're on top of one of these medium-sized faults, it could feel to you like a big one 20 miles away, right? Simple laws of decay of the rate of energy spread, right? So those are disturbing also if you look at the map. Next slide. And then I want to just put this plug out there. This is like a public service announcement. Many people think, oh my gosh, I'm so close to Stanford Hospital. If I get an owie boo-boo in the earthquake, I'll just wander on over to Stanford Hospital. Okay. Anybody understand, even with the new hospital, what their typical emergency capacity is to take patients in? It's low. Below a dozen usually is there, right? Very low. So if you think you're going to wander on over to the emergency department at Stanford in the middle of the earthquake, you will be parked in their parking lot, hopefully on a green tarp, not a black tarp, for a long period of time. Daryl.
How long did you wait?
Yeah.
It's a long time.
It's a long time. So if we're stacking ambulances because we can't can't process them. That's a clue. There's a term called hallway beds, which is a bit disturbing. Means you're in a bed, hospital bed, but you're stuck in a hallway with kind of altered level of care. Parking lot beds too. Exactly. So there's some fun things here. If you ever watch Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote, like don't light matches if you think there's gas, fun facts. Please avoid that. But right, this is back to what should you really do. So let's go to the next slide and get positive. First of all, whether you like it or not, we're all in this together. Next slide. And so let's make it personal. I said that the output of tonight is going to hopefully drive you to do something to improve your personal preparedness. A butane soldering iron is certainly a good addition to your personal preparedness. But think about the three things that you really need to have in large, right? Some kind of plan. If it's you and the wife and husband, children, that's a more involved plan. If it's you and a goldfish, the plan is short. Be sure the goldfish is aware of the plan. Okay. He may be in charge. Disaster kit. Well, kits are nice. They just need to be close to wherever you are when you need it. So I like multiple smaller kits rather than giant kits, right? And then be aware, be informed. You'd think ham radio people would be very, very good at this. Sometimes you are, and sometimes your mileage may vary. So I'm going to give you some tips about how to be better informed for disaster stuff, right? Because the bottom line is if you are better prepared, you're going to reduce the burden on limited public safety resources and medical hospital system resources too. Next slide. So I encourage you to start with personal preparedness. So go to cityofpalta.org/preparedness. We have lots of templates and things. It's not expensive. It's not all that difficult, but doing something is better than doing nothing. Next slide. Build some sort of kit. I like one in the car, the office, the home, wherever you spend time. Yep. If you spend a lot of time on your rollerblades, your kit may be kind of small. Okay. But think pragmatically. What might you need? We've talked about many of these things on here. Next slide. So stay informed. If you're spending a lot of time here in Palo Alto, these are the Palo Alto ones. Alert SCC is for the entire county of Santa Clara. If you're in San Mateo County, smcalert.info is the equivalent of that. So sign up if you work there, live there, spend a lot of time there. Yeah, you have the slides, so you can grab it. We'd love to have everybody sign up. Our Stay Informed page is very helpful. I would say at a minimum, Alert SCC and SMC Alert if you're in San Mateo County, and then Nixle, NIXLE for us. Sign up for our Nixle for public safety. If you want to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever, that's fine. But Nixle is a little less obtuse. If and when we don't have interweb anymore, remember that we can actually talk on 90.1 FM. Mark Lawrence is the station engineer. Many of you know Mark. He's a ham. That's KZSU, the Stanford radio station. Right? We're not going to be on that in the first hour or two after an earthquake, but eventually that's handy to know. We all know BEEP. This is a test of the emergency alert system. So KCBS and other sources for that. Don't forget that broadcast radio could actually be useful. Okay. When there's no more Google Maps or Waze or any of that. Next slide. Okay. ESV, Emergency Services Volunteers. If you live, work, or spend time in Palo Alto, you're very welcome to join our program. If you prefer to join in the city which you live, Cupertino, Redwood City, wherever, please look up your respective program. There are a lot of names for these. The most common one is CERT, Community Emergency Response Team. And then of course, ARES, RACES, ACS for ham radio. SPECS, the Southern Peninsula Emergency Communication System, is a great group. They run a weekly net. So if you're not already on that net, I encourage you to do that. Our info is there on the webpage just in the interest of time. Next slide. Okay, so how to call 911. Anybody have one of these cool cell phones? They're nifty, aren't they? Well, before they become a paperweight or a brick, something bad is happening. Don't assume that somebody else has called us. We would rather get 20 calls about the same thing than 0 calls because everybody thought, oh, I thought you called. Right? That is especially true for, heaven forbid, gunshots fired on a campus or something like that. Really, really important. So we always say, call us first. Right? You may not know everything. Remember those questions, what happens? I hear popping sounds. I think it's gunshots. But in the old days, by the way, 911 would say, 911, what's your emergency? In the era of cell phones, it's 911, what's your location? Real estate, location, location, location. Figure that out before you dial 911. How am I going to describe to somebody who doesn't know Cubberley, because your call could go to CHP? Well, look at that. Cell phone might go to CHP, especially if your GPS is a little bit wonky or it thinks you're on or near a highway. Yes. Right. They won't know. Yeah. It's like my favorite is I'm at Starbucks. Okay. Thank you. Me too. Yep. Yeah. Cops are already there. Oh, not that one. Next. Yeah. So location, 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 and then let them ask you about the nature of the emergency. Frankly, if you get disconnected and can't get through, we know something's wrong at 4000 Middlefield, Palo Alto, Cubberley. Room H5 or wherever the hell we are, right? Okay, good. That's location, location, location. If you want to put this in your cell phone, this is police, fire, emergency medical services. 3292413 is Palo Alto Dispatch. The so-called non-emergency number, but a distinction without a difference in Palo Alto. The same people who answer our 911 are answering this. The difference, though, is important. This doesn't provide any geo tagging info. It doesn't give any location, but correct. That's just a regular number that we call. Okay. But you're right on the edge of Mountain View. So if you really want to guarantee that you get us and not pesky Mountain View, go ahead. You can do it. Okay. Next slide. How to be a good witness. I'm not going to go through all this, but you can download this and keep this, on your phone. This is the order of a suspect. Could be missing person, could be victim. It's just person. But these are things that are difficult to change or alter or disguise. So that's why they're there. And this is the order that our dispatch computer takes it. So if you want to be a pro, and vehicles, if you don't know a Maserati from a Yugo, good luck. But try to get square with what the vehicle is. Okay. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Right. It's a dark colored SUV with a I heart crime bumper sticker. See, those are good pro tips that we love. Right. Next slide. Yes. I honk if you like crime. Right. So critical incidents, right? This is where we really want 911 to work. Okay. So teaching you all to be a good witness is, again, my public service announcement. There are a lot of these things that could cause something bad to go wrong. And it's not just Palo Alto, it's everywhere in the Bay Area, right? You're at some fun event, some stadium, some park, some church, whatever it is, and something goes wrong. So think about, okay, what are the scenarios that could generate risk? And nobody thought the Gilroy Garlic Festival was particularly going to be dangerous. Yeah, until it was, right? By the way, that call came into 911 as 10 or more terrorists shooting the place up. Turned out to be one guy. But humans under stress, right? We do this in the police academy. People are, in the midst of writing something down, and we have instructors from a different class dress up and run through the room. And we say, okay, everybody describe the guys you just saw run through the room. And these are pretty far along trained police recruits. Usually they get it completely wrong, because when adrenaline dumps, your short-term memory goes, you get tunnel vision, all these bad things physiologically and psychologically happen. So humans are bad witnesses, except this thing again. This might help jog your memory and be useful in court. Thank you. Right. So keep that in mind. Next slide. Okay. I like this too, because we're working on human cognition with anybody know what those little animals are? Meerkats. Now, meerkats have evolved a very complex survival mechanism. If you look at them, they never ever looking all the same place once. Humans, however, something goes pop or there's some shiny object. What do? We all look at it together. Ooh, the Kardashians, right? That is a fatal flaw. The meerkats are smarter than us. So I want us to become more like meerkats as a society, where everybody's looking at a different angle. We have a diverse set of opinions and views. And those are synthesized and integrated into some kind of output that's a little better than chasing the latest meme or whatever's going on. So that's my little commentary. Next slide. Good. My 1 hour is almost up. What are we going to do about all this crazy stuff that I presented tonight, other than try to, raffle off the MEOC, right? We're not doing that. I want you really to take some kind of step to get better prepared, encourage family members, neighbors, friends, family members who live far away, do something, because most people do nothing. And if you do nothing, you're going to be a victim. At least get prepared so you're not a burden on us. That would be great. And I think we could all do better. So please volunteer with your CERT program, your A's Races program, whatever is available in your community or another community you choose to affiliate with. Please do that. Volunteers make us stronger. Next slide and final slide. If you have any questions after tonight's little presentation, email is best. Shoot me an email or talk to Rob or Jim. They have my contact info. I'm Ken, KB6 BPM 73.
No go, no go. Okay, we'll let them. Oh, did I see a hand back there? No. All right. Anybody in Zoom? Questions? Oh, Connie had one. Coming up to Connie.
Hi, yes, this is Connie, KN2EFI. What is in your vehicle? I mean, you're driving around your family vehicle. What's your daily,
Yes.
everyday carry?
I'll tell
Vehicle, everyday carry.
lots of stuff. I don't actually keep like extra guns or any of that stuff. I'm not Mr. Zombie Apocalypse. I'll tell you practical stuff. Two things that are just about practical survival. One, a very nice water filter from REI, because we are, even in a drought, we have a lot of running water in creeks and whatnot. And you can last some of us quite a while without food, but water is problematic. So having a way to filter water and drink it is super important. That's one. And then I don't always wear safety boots. So I keep both a pair of hiking boots and a pair of running shoes in my car, because if I went off to the market and I'm just wearing flip-flops, and that's when Murphy's Law triggers the 9.9 earthquake, that would really suck to only have flip-flops. So those are some of the pro tips. Good question, Connie. I don't keep food in the car. No, it gets too hot. It's just not worth it. So yeah, it melts. So, no, nor do I keep a crossbow to hunt elk. I just, I'll figure it out. Yep. Other questions?
Ooh.
Connie's gonna-
Connie's
Where can we
up.
get copies of the slides?
Sure. We've got the slides, so we could probably just PDF them or put them somewhere. Okay.
Yeah, just email them to me and I'll take it from there.
Sorry for monopolizing the Q&A, but you seem like an expert. So what is your communication plan with your family?
Well, ham radio is part of it, but I've got family, in different places. So, I unfortunately don't have a great solution, right? Absent ham radio, I mean, there's some cool things with little internet beacons and little, I forget the name of those little orange things, the Spot, for example. I haven't bothered with that. So my plan is to have a family reunification plan. My family needs to know that I'm going to be gone for a while. That's really it. And there may be no communication. That's hard for us to accept in today's world where we're used to constant contact. But believe it or not, for the younger folks here, there was a time when cell phones didn't exist, and maybe you weren't actually in constant communication, and people could survive, but it requires family members to be really able to deal with that. They're on the back.
Carol's coming up.
Yeah, I'd like to remind folks, the PG&E power safety power shutoff is a good reminder that these things become a brick in about 14 hours. Because a lot of the cell towers do not have, battery backup that'll last longer. And the one that happened in 2019, we actually watched what I call a service decay over time. So just be aware that if something major happens, that you lose power. A lot of things that we do depend on power, and you kind of take it for granted. And so the cell towers they'll start dropping off 14, 15 by 20 hours. You'll have virtually no cell service unless the cell tower has a generator or whatever that's running. Most don't. So just wanted to remind folks of that.
Yeah, Ken, on that note, being a paramedic, I was able to sign up with FirstNet. Has that been a good service?
Yeah, FirstNet, for those who don't know, is it's running on AT&T, and they give some augmented and prioritization for those of us in the public safety and certain medical responders. Yeah, theoretically, but
Theoretically.
to Daryl's point, if the physical layer dumps because there's no power or there's some disruption, then we're all in that sinking ship together. So while I like FirstNet and I like Verizon's attempts to do this, real network hardening is not there because these are commercial carriers. They're there to make money. That's their job. And so to have what I would want is a much more resilient network would be involving solar battery systems, because eventually, like I said earlier, you run out of propane or diesel or whatever fuel you're using, and maybe you extend the life of the cell. And the backhaul, by the way, also has to be there with fiber. It's not just the cell, right? So you need a lot of stuff to work. All those UPS uninterruptible power supplies, they're quite interruptible, and that's the problem. But yeah, FirstNet is a helpful element, Rob.
Cool. Oh, it looks like Ben and then Rachel, and I won't forget you, Zoom. I see some hands up there.
On Zoom.
I'm curious, as a pilot who flies from Palo Alto, what are some of the different risk factors between that small kind of airport and the larger ones?
As you know, Palo Alto Airport is a super busy GA, general aviation airport, and you're flying through a lot of, I think it's called Class D airspace and other Delta Charlie, right? All those restricted airspaces. So, compared to like Watsonville or, some of the, the $100 hamburger, probably now $200 hamburger runs, $300 hamburger with the price of avgas. Yeah. So we have some accidents, unfortunately, that have occurred. The most recent one, I think, was a medical emergency was the cause. So we have to be careful to not just conflate all them together. But Palo Alto is a complex airspace. It's not, as you know, on approach all that difficult if you know what you're doing, but there's just so many distractions that, a lot of stuff going on. And then, if heaven forbid you can't make it to the airport in the old days, well, you might be able to sit down on Highway 101 and that might work. And we've had that happen. Even with the pandemic, the traffic on 101 is awful. And then you might be really, really lucky and be able to sit down on somewhere else, Page Mill Road, El Camino, but we have overhead power lines. We have so many obstructions that just make it tenuous. And we don't have what we had 40 years ago, which is open fields and things like that. I guess 40 plus years ago, there were still strawberry fields in parts of Palo Alto. There was a drive-in theater where Greer Park is. Those kind of open spaces don't exist anywhere near the airport. So complexity, yeah, absolutely. And then we have Zoom questions. Rachel, okay, very good.
And thank you so much. Great presentation. Really appreciate it. So I'm in Menlo Park.
Yeah.
And I know, you came out of Menlo Park. You did a great job, getting a lot of the things established. But in the 10 years plus that you left, we've gone through a number of CERT coordinators at the fire district. And each time that happens, we lose that continuity. We get to a certain point and then the person leaves. And so suggestions, Palo Alto's lucky they've had you, for a number of years, but what would you recommend for cities like ours that, every few years, we almost have to start over. We just don't have that continuity of leadership.
Yeah.
And how do we, we have communications plans, we go through that, but each time we have to still re-educate and almost start over.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. So for those who don't know, I was the emergency coordinator for Menlo Fire District, Menlo Park, Atherton, East Palo Alto. I was also the EC for Stanford University for a while. I wasn't employed by the fire district or the police department in Menlo Park, but I worked a lot with them. And they've had a lot of turnover. So the reality is you might just be stuck re-educating, and you might, the better approach might be to build even more volunteers to have that continuity, because it may not be able to exist, especially there where you've got a separate fire district that's a different government entity from the city of Menlo Park, the city of East Palo Alto, and the town of Atherton. So that complexity is there. I don't know, Jeff Norris is on the line from the county emergency management. He might have a more input, but keep doing it. Eventually it might stick. The reason that Palo Alto was able to get dedicated emergency management resources was a lot due to our emergency services volunteers expressing those kinds of things to their elected officials, but it was combined with a lot of other factors, not just volunteers alone. So that's the reality.
Yeah, one of the problems that we have is because things keep changing,
Yep.
that the certs get frustrated and then they leave and they just don't want to continue to participate if each time they have to start over. And so, yes, it's great to say you need to get more certs involved and things, but if we don't have that leadership, that's where things kind of fall apart each time. And then we have to kind of reestablish, rebuild, re-educate, and go through that whole process again. So anyway.
Yep. Keep doing it. And they're great people who are working on all sides of that. So keep the efforts going. Okay. We have Zoom questions.
Yeah, we got Zoom. Let's go with Shri, and then I see Ted up there. Shri, take it away.
Hello, this is Shri KA6Q, also Palo Alto CERT ESV. I saw when you mentioned the 2413 phone number and I looked it up, I also saw that there is a 650-321-4433 listed as an emergency number. So how does that differ from the non-emergency number?
It really doesn't. There are actually a number of other numbers that are out there. So they all go to the same place, answered by the same people. So we just to keep things simple, I only put that one. But yes, there are a few others. If you look in the on the city's website, what used to be the white pages, nobody knows what that anymore. Okay, good question. And thanks for being an ESV. Yeah, they all roll in hunts, the non-911. So yeah, your odds are the same. All the odds are the same. Yep. Other question online.
Ted, go ahead, Ted.
Hi. It seems like a productive exercise, instead of telling people, oh, here's an emergency kit, go out and buy all this stuff. Just get people to be aware of how they are vulnerable. And these are yes or no questions. Like, is any of your people diabetic? Does anybody use a wheelchair? Do you have an aquarium? Okay, I mean, a lot of people are going to be terrified to leave their fish behind because fish need to be fed.
I'm not going to make any sushi jokes here. Sorry.
Well, the point. Look, I mean, the point.
But I am on a roll. Thank you. Thank you.
Forewarned is forearmed, and if you are aware of your vulnerabilities, then you will be able to deal with them when you realize you're on your own. So my point seems to be that a step is skipped. That is, people need to look critically. Like, do you need diapers for a kid? Do you need to heat formula for an infant who can't be breastfed? These are the questions that people should ask themselves and be ready to answer, because once they realize how vulnerable they are, then they'll take steps, because otherwise you're sort of talking about step 2 instead of step 1. A lot of people don't understand how vulnerable they're going to be. Like last year or a couple of years ago, 72 hours without power. I had a generator, but a lot of people didn't. And they're kind of, off in the weeds, wondering what to do. So that is my remark. Whiskey 6 Sierra Yankee.
Thanks, Ted. I fully agree with that. If you go to the Palo Alto Neighborhoods Emergency Prep website, which was in my slides, they approach it the same way. You need to individualize your kit. It's fine to go to Costco or wherever and buy a generic kit, but always personalize it and think about, you've got your niece coming with her infant daughter, and that's when the earthquake's going to happen. So think about a little bit of conditional preparedness. I think that's a really good point.
I see Jeff. Is that Jeff up in there?
Jeff from County of San Mateo.
County of San Mateo, take it away.
Yes, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you. There's kind of a misfortune of timing for this event in that last weekend on Saturday the 30th was the San Mateo County Preparedness Day. And we actually addressed a lot of these questions where people could ask questions about their risks and hazards. And we actually went through a lot of different opportunities, including what to pack into a kit, to reinforce a lot of what Ken has said. Make a plan, build a kit, stay informed. And kits are great, but you have to customize them for your particular needs. The plan has to suit your particular family circumstance, and staying informed, you really do need to take advantage of those alert and warning systems that are out there. And more than happy to come to a future meeting and reinforce a lot of Ken's points.
Thanks, Jeff. And for those who don't know, Jeff, he's emergency management coordinator with the Department of Emergency Management, which is the OES for San Mateo County. A really great resource. So I know many paramembers live and or work in San Mateo County. So we do a ton of work together, and Jeff is a really great resource. So I'm glad you're on the Zoom.
Yeah, Jeff, thanks for joining us. I appreciate your presence. Jeff, thanks for joining us. I appreciate your presence. Okay, any other questions on Zoom? I don't see the whole screen, so if you're up there, just shout at me. Okay, anybody else here in the room? Questions? Oh, let me get Daryl and I'll get you, Jim.
Yeah, Ken, a couple of years ago, or was it 2019? We actually participated in the Palo Alto Preparedness Fair, I think is what it was, over at Stanford. And we actually set up near, well, actually, we actually drew power from your vehicle, from your MIOC. You guys can do that again?
Yes, we obviously the pandemic has thrown a monkey wrench into a lot of those events, but yes, we did, for those who don't know, kind of a mini version of what San Mateo County did. It was a preparedness day at Stanford Shopping Center. We brought a number of agencies and vehicles and show and tell, and a lot of it was, you know, para and specs and others could demo and get members. So when we do it again, I'll let you know. It won't be this year though.
Yeah, no, thanks.
Okay. And I think Jim had a question.
Actually, it wasn't a question. It was more a comment. The preparedness you've talked about so far is for the big one and whatnot is a very short-lived affair. But if memory serves me, at least a number of years ago, FEMA said you need to be prepared for 3 days. Now 3 days is ridiculous. FEMA can't even mobilize in 3 days, even if they're sitting at your doorstep. So I think it's, you know, being prepared and whatnot is a very important thing, but one needs to be prepared for 2 to 3 weeks.
Yep.
And not just the short term thing. You need to have water and as you say, you've got a filter and so forth. But you need to have a plan that goes beyond the 10-minute interval.
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. I fully agree. I mean, the 72-hour prep window was always kind of a compromise. It was to make it a little less scary, but what we tell our members is minimum 2 weeks. No Safeway, no water, no power. And that gets to be a head scratcher depending on where you live. Or gasoline. Yep. So think that through.
Look at how long it took PG&E to get power back on after Loma Prieta in a lot of places. It was weeks.
Right. And things are even worse now. If you read about the supply chain availability of transformers and a lot of basic components that used to be in much more abundant supply in 1989 than they are these days. So PSPS is an omen for what could happen in an earthquake, even though they're totally different deals. But they, you know, we had a close call, speaking of San Mateo County, with that fire on Edgewood a couple weeks back. Like that could have been worse, very much worse. And make sure everybody's prepared for wildland fire season, even if you think you're not in a wildland fire area, because you are right here. All right.
Couple of comments that Jeff put in the chat that I wanted to make sure got read. So a lot of cellular systems at smaller sites have little or no backup. There's legislation that's stalled that would mandate 72 hours of backup. And FirstNet overloads at major events as well. It significantly helps local emergency services at smaller events, but at big incidents still overloads. Yep. Thanks, Jeff.
Absolutely.
Okay, he's going to start charging us overtime. So any last questions, anybody? Okay, Ken, thank you so much.